So in today's video, we are going to learn about various terminologies in carbohydrate metabolism that you should know before starting the various carbohydrate metabolism. You should know the various terminologies in carbohydrate metabolism and various definitions of the major pathways. You have to know the definition of the glycolysis, citric acid cycle, gluconeogenesis, and other various definition of the major pathway. So before actually starting these various cycles or these various topics, actual proper definition and explanation of the major pathway you should know very well. So now let us start the various definition of the major pathways. So the glucose is the central molecule in the carbohydrate metabolism. You should know that. So without glucose, the carbohydrate metabolism doesn't occur. And the glucose is always stored as glycogen. So you should know this. Now let us discuss one by one the definition of the major pathways. First of all, let's talk about the glycolysis. What do you mean by the glycolysis? Glycolysis is also known as the Embeden-Meyerhof pathway. The glycolysis is the oxidation of glucose to produce the pyruvate and lactate along with the ATP production. So when the glucose is oxidized to produce pyruvate and lactate with the production of the ATP, then it is known as the glycolysis. Now let us talk about what is citric acid cycle, or citric acid cycle is also known as Krebs cycle or tricyclic acid cycle, TCA cycle. Tricyclic acid cycle. The citric acid cycle is the cycle that involves the oxidation of acetyl coenzyme A to carbon dioxide. So again I am going to tell you, the citric acid cycle is the oxidation of acetyl coenzyme A to carbon dioxide. Now let us talk about the gluconeogenesis. What is gluconeogenesis? The gluconeogenesis is the process which involves the production of the glucose from the non-carbohydrate precursors. So if there is production of the glucose from the non-carbohydrate precursors, then that process is called gluconeogenesis. The non-carbohydrate precursor could be amino acid or glycerol, or they could be any precursors. Now glycogenesis. The glycogenesis is the production of the glycogen from the glucose. If the glycogen is produced from the glucose, then that pathway is known as glycogenesis. Then what is glycogenolysis? The glycogenolysis is the process which involves the breakdown of the glycogen to the glucose. So when there is formation of the glucose from the glycogen breakdown, then that pathway is known as glycogenolysis. Now let us talk about the HMP shunt, or HMP shunt is also known as the pentose phosphate pathway, or it is also known as direct oxidative pathway. It is known as direct oxidative pathway because the glucose is oxidized directly to carbon dioxide and water. So it is known as direct oxidative pathway. The HMP shunt is the pathway alternative to glycolysis and TCA cycle for the oxidation of glucose to carbon dioxide and water. Now let us talk about uronic acid pathway. The uronic acid pathway is alternate oxidative pathway for glucose. The glucose is converted into gluconic acid and glucuronic acid and pentoses and ascorbic acid in animals. Now let us talk about the galactose metabolism. The galactose metabolism involves the conversion of the galactose to glucose and synthesis of the lactose. And fructose metabolism. The fructose metabolism is the oxidation of fructose to pyruvate, and also the fructose metabolism indicates the relation between the fructose and glucose metabolism. Amino sugar and mucopolysaccharide metabolism. What does it mean by amino sugar and mucopolysaccharide metabolism? It is the synthesis of the amino sugars and other sugar for the formation of the mucopolysaccharides and glycoprotein. Again, I am going to revise the various terminology and definition of the pathway. The glycolysis. The glycolysis is the oxidation of glucose to pyruvate and lactate to produce ATP. The citric acid cycle or Krebs cycle or TCA cycle is oxidation of the acetyl coenzyme A to carbon dioxide. The gluconeogenesis is the process which involves the production of the glucose from the non-carbohydrate precursors. The glycogenesis is the process of formation of the glycogen from the glucose. The glycogenolysis is the process of glycogen breakdown to form the glucose. The SMP shunt or pentose phosphate pathway or direct oxidative pathway is the direct oxidation of the glucose to carbon dioxide and the water. And uronic acid pathway is the conversion of the glucose to glucuronic acid and pentoses. The galactose metabolism involves the metabolism of galactose to form glucose and synthesis of the lactose. And the fructose metabolism denotes the oxidation of fructose to pyruvate, and it also denotes the relationship between the fructose and glucose metabolism. The amino sugar and the mucopolysaccharide metabolism denotes the synthesis of amino sugars and other sugars for the formation of mucopolysaccharide and glycoprotein. I hope you understood this lecture. So I want you to know these various terminologies before actually starting the carbohydrate metabolism. Thank you.